Once upon a time, nestled deep in the countryside where the sun shone brightly on green fields and cool ponds, a mother duck sat on her nest. She'd been sitting on a clutch of eggs for a very long time, and she was getting quite tired of it. But her patience was about to pay off. One by one, the eggs began to crack. Peep, peep. Out popped fluffy, yellow ducklings, looking around at the big, wide world for the first time. The mother duck was overjoyed. She counted them one by one. But wait, there was one egg left. It was much larger than all the others. She decided to sit on it just a little while longer. Finally, the big egg started to tremble and crack. Out tumbled a chick, but he looked very different from his brothers and sisters. He was large, clumsy, and his feathers were a dull gray color. The other ducklings pointed and quacked. "He's so ugly." The mother duck looked at her strange new baby. She thought, "Well, he is my own, and he's not so ugly when you look closely." But she couldn't deny he was different. She hoped he would just be a bit of a late bloomer. She decided to take her new family for their first swim. Splash! One by one, the little yellow ducklings jumped into the water and paddled perfectly. Then it was the big gray duckling's turn. He jumped in and, to his mother's relief, swam beautifully, his long legs paddling strong and true. "At least he can swim," she thought with a sigh. But life on the farm was not easy for the little gray bird. The other ducks nipped at him, the chickens pecked him, and even the turkey, who thought himself an emperor, would puff up and gobble at him. His own brothers and sisters were cruel, often wishing a cat would just come and get him. Every day was the same. He was pushed and shoved, laughed at and made to feel completely out of place. He felt so lonely and sad. He would often hide in the reeds, watching the other happy duck families and wishing he belonged somewhere. The poor duckling's heart ached with loneliness. He just didn't fit in. One day he couldn't take it anymore. He decided to run away. He flew over the farmyard fence, startling the little birds in the bush, and just kept going. He flew and flew until he reached a great marsh where wild ducks lived. He was exhausted. He bowed his head politely and asked, "May I please stay here with you for a while?" But the wild ducks looked him up and down. "You're certainly an odd-looking fellow," they quacked. "But we suppose you can stay, as long as you don't try to marry into our family." The poor duckling didn't want to marry anyone. He just wanted a quiet place to rest. But his troubles weren't over. A few days later, bang, bang, 2 gunshots echoed across the marsh. Hunters had arrived. The wild ducks scattered in a panic. The little duckling hid his head under his wing, terrified. A huge hunting dog came splashing through the reeds, its long tongue hanging out. The dog saw the duckling, opened its massive jaws, showed its sharp teeth, and then it just turned and ran away. "Oh, thank goodness," sighed the duckling. "I am so ugly that even the dog won't bother with me." He waited until it was quiet again, and then continued his journey. As evening fell, he stumbled upon a rickety old cottage. The door was hanging off its hinges, so he slipped inside. An old woman lived there with her cat and her hen. The woman, whose eyesight was poor, thought he was a fat duck that could lay eggs. "Good," she said. "Now we shall have duck eggs." The cat, who called himself Sunny, and the hen, Chicky Short Legs, considered themselves the masters of the house. They looked down on the new arrival. "Can you lay eggs?" asked the hen. "No," said the duckling sadly. "Can you purr or arch your back?" asked the cat. "No," he replied. "Well then, what good are you?" they scoffed. "You should stick to what you know." The duckling felt more isolated than ever. He started to long for the feeling of cool water and the freedom of swimming under the open sky. He told the hen about his desire to swim. "What a silly idea," clucked the hen. "You have nothing better to do, so you get these foolish notions. Lay an egg or learn to purr and you'll get over it. But it's so wonderful to feel the water close over your head and to dive down to the bottom." He exclaimed. "Yes, a fine pleasure indeed," said the hen with a sneer. "You must be mad." The duckling realized he could never belong here either. So one day he said his goodbyes and left the little cottage, heading back out into the world in search of a place where he could simply be himself. He found a lake and spent his days swimming and diving, but he was still all alone. As autumn arrived, the leaves on the trees turned gold and red. The days grew shorter and colder. One evening, as the sun was setting in a blaze of color, a flock of magnificent birds flew overhead. He had never seen anything so beautiful. They were dazzlingly white, with long, graceful necks. They were swans, and they were migrating south for the winter. They let out a strange, beautiful cry as they soared through the sky. The little duckling felt a powerful pull towards them. He stretched his own neck and let out a cry so loud and strange that it frightened even himself. He watched them until they were just a tiny speck in the distance, and then he dove under the water, his heart filled with a strange sadness. He didn't know what those birds were, but he felt he loved them more than anything he had ever seen. The winter was brutally cold. The lake began to freeze over. The duckling had to swim in circles constantly just to keep a small patch of water open. But the hole got smaller and smaller. Finally, he became too exhausted to move and was frozen fast in the ice. Early the next morning, a kind farmer came by and saw the trapped bird. He broke the ice with his wooden shoe, carried the duckling home to his wife, and they revived him. The farmer's children wanted to play with him, but the duckling was terrified. He thought they were going to hurt him. In a panic, he fluttered into the milk pan, splashing milk all over the room. The woman shrieked and waved her hands, which scared him even more. He flew into the butter tub, then into the flour barrel, and came out covered in white powder. It was complete chaos. He finally found the open door and tumbled out into the snow, hiding in the bush. He somehow survived the rest of the long, harsh winter, huddled among the reeds in the marsh. It was a miserable, lonely time. But then, slowly, the sun began to shine more warmly. The birds began to sing. Spring had arrived. The duckling felt a new strength in his wings. He flapped them, and they were much larger and more powerful than before. He lifted off the ground and flew high into the air. He soared over fields and gardens until he came to a beautiful, large pond. And there, gliding gracefully on the water, were 3 of the magnificent white birds he had seen in the autumn. 3 beautiful swans. He felt that strange pull again, stronger than ever. "I will fly to them, those royal birds," he thought. "They will probably peck me to death for being so ugly and daring to approach them, but it doesn't matter. It's better to be destroyed by them than to be bitten by ducks, pecked by hens, and suffer through another miserable winter alone." So he flew down to the water and swam towards them. The swans saw him and paddled towards him with their feathers rustling. "Kill me now," he whispered, and he bowed his head down to the water, awaiting his fate. But what did he see in the clear reflection? It wasn't a clumsy, gray, ugly bird. Staring back at him was a swan. He was no longer a dark, awkward duckling. He was one of them. He had transformed. He wasn't an ugly duckling at all. He was a swan. He had been a swan all along. He just hadn't known it. It didn't matter that he was born in a duck's nest. His heart was good and his spirit was strong, and that was what truly mattered. The other swans swam around him and stroked him with their beaks in welcome. Just then, some children ran into the garden. "Look, a new one!" They shouted with joy. "The new one is the most beautiful of all." He's so young and handsome." The young swan felt a pang of shyness and tucked his head under his wing. He was overwhelmed. He thought of all the hardship and loneliness he had endured. But now it was all in the past. He wasn't proud or vain, but his heart swelled with happiness. He rustled his feathers, lifted his slender neck, and cried out with joy. "I never dreamed of so much happiness when I was the ugly duckling." He was home. He was beautiful. And he was finally truly happy. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tailies that warm the heart.